Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and welcome to the discussion, a Canadian view of the global marketplace. Before I go any further, I'd like to thank Bruce Power for their generous sponsorship of the presentation theater we are in. Last March, at the International Commercialization Forum held here in Toronto, commercialization experts from Canada and around the world discussed the impact of the commercialization of research discoveries on the world economy. This group of experts emphasized the critical importance of intermediary organizations facilitating access to the global marketplace. At the forum, the CCR launched a pilot program to accelerate this access for early-stage companies that are customer and or investor ready. Today, this panel will discuss the views on how Canadian intermediary organizations can help grow promising companies by helping them access global players. But before I introduce the panel, let's take a look at the highlights from the International Commercialization Forum.
For initiating the International Commercialization Forum that has brought together some very distinguished people from around the world to share the best and brightest ideas in the commercialization of research.
We're fortunate to have 80 people here from 22 countries to spread the ideas about what works, what doesn't work.
We do a good job in Canada of supporting publicly funded research, but we are not as good as we have to be in commercializing that research.
The Center for Commercialization of Research, of course, is one of the best known of the CSERs operating under the Networks of Centers of Excellence program. We think that it's one of the most innovative, taking steps to make sure that it can continue to improve to serve companies in the future.
CCR with the idea of embedding an executive in these companies to help them get their products to market more quickly, to help them reduce the risk for follow-on investment, that is exactly the right way to go.
What it gets down to is opportunity to also meet with our collaborators in Ontario, and then also with contacts in other countries to really make those local connections, I think, is really, really critical. It's about the people-to-people relationships.
Truly, events like today's International Commercialization Forum and organizations like the Ontario Centres of Excellence are also important, more so now than probably ever before.
The commercialization of research is a very high priority for our government. We recognize that moving ideas and innovations from our universities, our into the marketplace is absolutely key.
I think the secret ingredient to successful research is collaboration with the business community. And by that I don't mean, you don't wait until something's ready to be commercialized. You start at the beginning and you hear what the business community needs. And you also foster a lot of cross-pollination, so placements in business at universities.
I found it actually quite invigorating. It's always interesting and to see the varying views around innovation. What is it and what are some of the challenges associated with it and how might we overcome some of those challenges. So great discussion so far.
So the only thing I would say is make sure that you keep yourself as open as possible, that your innovators connect with the actively. They don't just stay in their own individual markets or individual contexts.
One of my goals is to form very strong launch pads in other markets around the world for our companies in San Diego, and then also as companies are looking to access the US market or the California market, to attract them to San Diego as a spot where they're going to do business. But it actually can only happen face to face. It's the same reason you get on an airplane and close a deal and you don't do it via gotomeeting.com. You've got to build the chemistry, understand the culture.
At a conference where you have many different cultures, different most important things in technology transfer and commercialization is the network. Because having a contact in Canada or having in Australia is something very important, because then we can just be in touch and say, okay, this is something that there's a company there that can be interested.
Coming and working in Canada is wonderful for me because the language, culture, the tradition, the history. The Canadians are great people to work with.
All the major changes that are happening in terms of economy in the world, a lot of it is impacted by research. All the research that is going on in new sources of energy and so on will impact the world economy, because as the fossil fuels will be over in about 50 years, the research that is going on will have a critical impact on the world economy and the world as a whole.
The main goal is to facilitate partnerships between organizations in different countries, and this is actually there are partnerships being forged, and there'll be more. So I think we can say mission accomplished. To help us explore this topic more deeply, today we have a riveting panel with 4 panel members who were present at the International Commercialization Forum. I'll introduce them to you very briefly. If you want to read more about them, you can go on the website and find out more information. So on my immediate right, I have Yvon Brousseau, who is CEO of the Center of Excellence for Energy Efficiency based in Quebec. Welcome, Yvon. Next is Jeff Krelenston, President of the Impact Group based in Toronto. Welcome, Jeff. Next to Jeff is Pamela Freeman from Tech Edmonton. Pamela is Chief Operating Officer of Tech Edmonton in Alberta. And at the extreme right, we have Susan Gorges, who is CEO of Springboard West, based in Regina, Saskatchewan. Thank you, Susan, for joining us. Thank you, everyone on the panel, for being with us. So the way I'm going to conduct this panel, I have a few questions I'd like to ask to each of the panelists, and after that I will open up to the audience to get your comments and questions on the topic of the day, going global. So my first question to the panelists is, you've been there, we have seen a short 4-minute clip, you were there for 2 days. So what was your own personal takeaway from the International Commercialization Forum? Yvon, what's in it for you?
Okay, the most important point is with that type of initiative is to have access to direct person. I think to do business, it's very important to have a direct contact with the person. And in our group, for example, I'm the CEO of a company where we have 6 companies in portfolio, and we want to help them to commercialize their technology. And frankly, to have access to direct individuals, it's the key point. As an example, one of the persons we have met there, it's Steve Wong from Hong Kong. And right away, and we will talk a little bit later with this, instead of we have startup company here, in our portfolio, these companies are really attractive for this type of person who can help us to help our company to go to the market. Basically, that is the direct contact with these people. It's very, very important at the international level, right at the beginning.
Thank you, Yvon. So it seems that it's been very valuable to you. Jeff, you're CEO of Impact Group, more of a service provider, if I may say. What was in it for you? What did you get?
We've been looking at Canada for 20 years and trying to figure out why we're not doing well in the knowledge economy. We work with organizations, intermediaries. We provide data. And the thing that struck me is everyone's in the same boat. I've looked at OECD data, and Canada's way down on business R&D or whatever. But they're all struggling, and they're trying to get their domestic tech companies or service companies going global. They're fighting a culture that is very focused on technology and doesn't understand business. That's in spades in Canada, but I met people who were struggling with the same thing. And made personal contacts with people who see what we're doing in Canada with data. And I've met people in England now and in Finland, in Singapore, who want to work with us. This is my entrepreneur hat talking now, who want to do some work with us. The other thing I noticed was the intermediary organizations there, they all cared about commerce. And here in Canada, there's a lot of organizations, government funding organizations, universities, that don't care about commerce. And all of these people knew that it's about doing well in commerce and having the skills to do that. And they were trying to help their companies understand that and succeed. It was very refreshing.
Thank you, Jeff. Pamela, this is the second forum, second of two forums, or fora. It's coming back to me now. That you attended. Why did you come back to the, what did you get from the first and the second forum? What's in it for you coming from Edmonton to Toronto for this event?
Well, being from Alberta, we're always looking to make connections to help our companies go global. And attending the first forum last March demonstrated just the importance of bringing this group of people together, because at that time I was working on a project to create a social enterprise company, and that's not a familiar model in Alberta to build social enterprises. And I had the good fortune to meet Alan Barrell, who was featured on the video. He's quite an entertaining chap from Cambridge University. And not only is he a stellar scholar with adjunct professorships in Finland and Japan, but he also is an expert in healthcare and social enterprises. And so just over the networking session, I was talking to him about our opportunity. He thought it was a great opportunity, but then he continued the next day to start to send information. So it was case studies, it was research, it was all sorts of information that I could take back. And it not only helped us in our thinking, our approach, but also to demonstrate to our colleagues, to get internal buy-in, that this was really a viable option, to, especially when you're talking about working in the healthcare sector. So it was not only the connection, but also building on his experience. We weren't going from ground zero. It really just took us to a whole new level. So just an amazing contact.
Thank you, Pamela. Susan, was this your first or second forum you attended?
It was my second.
Your second forum. So what was in it for you?
Well, I think the most important thing for Springboard, since we're relatively new in the innovation intermediary space, is to learn best practices, or as I learned to say there, most effective practices. And one of our best contacts at this conference was with the operating director of Ben Franklin Technology Partners in Pennsylvania. They just came through their 10-year anniversary and did a retrospective analysis of their economic development. So I brought the numbers with me to make sure I have them correct, because I think this illustrates the point that if you put the right service models together, the right assistance together for the researchers, the inventors, the innovators, you will have huge economic impact. So I'm going to read the numbers. 10 years of investing in pre-revenue companies. So this is not a VC play, it's pre-revenue. And there were $140 million of investments that led to $3.4 billion in follow-on investments, meaning angels and venture capital coming into the state. It gave a $9.3 billion boost to their GDP at the state level. and $500 million in tax revenue. Furthermore, the analysis shows that the companies that they supported, their employees earned 33% more than the average wage in Pennsylvania. So it has a huge follow-on ripple impact down through the economy. And we're using these kinds of stats to convince our supporters that this is something we need to do in Saskatchewan to move from our commodity base to a more diversified economy. So these kinds of contacts are immeasurably important to us. And when we get the funding, we'll build the same model and therefore for our clients.
Thank you, Susan. What strikes me in the comments made by our four colleagues is that each one got something different from the forum. And yet they are all elements of a successful innovation ecosystem. We were 85 participants at the ICF, and if you ask the 85 of them, each one would have gotten something unique, special for them. The one thing that is common is the passion to make a difference in this world of commercializing discoveries. Let's move on to the second question. I'll start with you, Susan. At CCR, we have 90 companies in our portfolio. 1/3 of them...
Ladies and gentlemen, the presentation in the International Cafe is beginning right now. Please join us in the International Cafe Theater. Thank you.
Sorry for that. 1/3 of the companies are what we call born global. That is, they are pre-revenues, they grow to revenues, and their first revenue are globals. They are not local revenues. So it seems that connecting young companies to the global marketplace early is something of a trend. So what's your view on this aspect, Susan?
Well, I know most of us were trained to teach our companies, our startup companies, to start locally and then go regional, then country, and then go international. That doesn't work in today's economy. You have to, as we say to our clients, go big, go fast, or go home. You have to plan to be global. If you look at the success as it's analyzed by the startup genome, the most successful companies, the ones who can sustain rapid growth and be very successful over time, have what they call sustained and parallel growth on 5 dimensions: customers, product, their management team, and I would say their extended team, the business model, which is critical in understanding how you're going to go global. You need to set the foundation correctly in the beginning, and then, of course, funding. And if I can just give examples of how the ICA connections will help us connect our early stage clients. From a customer point of view, they understand local buying customs. The way this particular market wishes to purchase this kind of technology will be different country by country. We need to know the local product specifications and regulations, so in early stage design, we work that in. We don't have to do revision level N, and then N plus 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is way too expensive and takes way too much time. If you're going to plan to go global, you want to look at those specifications early on. You want to begin the discussions with distribution teams, with M&Es, with people in that target market, because those discussions take a long time. Just as the research and development took a long time, building business relationships takes a very long time. And then you need to decide what your business model is going to be and build the right business operational foundation. And then funding. Everyone thinks, oh, well, I'll just go get VC money. But as I move into new countries, I need things like banking introductions. I need to know how the financial systems work. I need to know tax laws. All of these things we want our clients to know very early on so they build the right foundation.
Thank you, Susan. Pamela, do you agree with all that Susan said, or do you have a contrasting view on this topic? Is it too risky for a young company to go global day one?
No, I would support Susan's comments. In fact, we have a case in point where currently I'm helping a CEO market. It's an early stage company. It's a medical device, a company that has a diagnostic tool for determining polyps and colon cancer, early stage. And we are looking at global markets right now because clearly it needs to go global. But the things that we struggle with is when you're looking at a product getting into a healthcare system, each country has its own mechanisms, right? So how does our customers are the HMOs, the national health systems, and they're all different in every country. So we need to know how that customer determines what they buy, how much they buy, and how they deploy the tests. And so we're actually going out and getting that information now so that we can build it into the company's business plan. And the other thing is you can't approach the world all in one go. So we're small, and so we need to be quite strategic. And so that is also part of the plan. And through the relationships, through the ICA, we're able to sort of get a sense of the priorities in each country so that we can start to align with what those countries' interests are, and we've got a contact there. So they are helping us gather that information. That's a really good feedback loop for the company. So when they've got everything ready, it's getting the technology and the business ready so that they intersect at the right point in time. And then they're ready for the global market.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for this very tangible example. What is interesting in both your comments, it's customer focus. You keep using the word customer, and I think Jeff is giving the thumb up. What is your view on this? You seem to agree, Jeff, with this.
Yeah. How many entrepreneurs in the audience? Curious. Put up your hand if you're an entrepreneur. And how many intermediary organizations trying to help entrepreneurs? Okay. And how many government people funding those folks? Okay. So we have a mix. If you're an entrepreneur in Canada, small country, big geography, small population, it's a small market. You have to go global. You have to be global if you're going to make a business. And you have to take a niche that is small enough that the big boys won't eat your lunch, but it's big enough around the world. Gennum Corporation was a good example. They were in semiconductor business. They picked semiconductors for hearing aids, because any national population has a small percentage of people who are hard of hearing, although that's probably changing. But globally, it's a big market, and they got 60% of the market, I think more. The types of interactions you get in ICA are really important. Another example is Zarlink. I think it was Zarlink. Kirk Mandy in Ottawa, serial entrepreneur. They met an Israeli company that looked around the world, talking to people, going to trade shows, who's building the equipment for endoscopies and colonoscopies. And they went to these trade shows and talked to suppliers and customers of suppliers, and there were a lot of tubes around, and they were looking for a non-invasive way of doing the diagnostic. And they were looking for a company with the RF experience, radio frequency experience, and they found Zarlink in Ottawa, and they did a joint venture, this Israeli company and this Canadian company, and they created a pill with a camera on it that you can swallow. They were looking for a key technology, the Israeli company, and they found it through the types of interactions you get with ICA. So you have to go global. If you don't, someone's going to eat your lunch. It's just the way to go, and it's all about customers.
Thank you, Jeff. Yvon, from your perspective, is it a view that you also embrace?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We are supported by global company with other C3, people like Rio Tinto Alcan, ABB, Alstom, Siemens, Cascade in Quebec for sure, Hydro-Quebec. All these big players are looking for technology. The true matter is now I'm in the energy field. The true matter, and I think it might be applicable also for other sectors. However, The dynamic we are in now when we are a startup company as an existing company, these big players are facing the market. It's them, they dynamize the market. And frankly, to be close of them, it's very important. And them, they are global, right at the beginning. And the interesting point we are in now, it's because traditionally we have a linear approach of how to go to the market. You know, you have your product, you sell it to your mother, father, and after that to your neighbor, and you try to go globally. But that's not the way to go now. The real way we, at C3E we see, and we are a startup company really interesting for big groups, it's because we are in a complex situation now. We are with a multidimensional perspective. And frankly, these big players at the international level and the global market, they have big challenge. They have to find the right solution for themselves to keep their leader position in the market. That is why in Canada, we really have a good opportunity here to bring our 25, 30 years experience in R&D and innovation technology to bring these technology to these big players where they want and they fight them between themselves to stay in the market. And somehow that is a very good opportunity for our startup company and existing company also to have their place to the global. Global market doesn't mean only traveling to the other country. It's to have that global approach in your mind, to be sure that you have something different that will bring for them the hidden weapon, to be sure that they will stay there. When you are small, doesn't mean you are not a key important point, because that is the way to see the global perspective here. And what I like with this initiative from the global marketplace, it's to give us the access to the decisional person, the decision maker, where they are there to look what we can do and what we can provide to them. And frankly, this is a very interesting point. I really appreciate also that the global marketplace is linked with the DFATE people, because these people are already connected in their market, and frankly, they have a real good connection also with these decision maker, and that is for us to bring in this platform all these expertise. Because again, it's a multidimensional perspective here we have to address to be sure that we will be there. And it's not a question, again, to be small or big. It's a question to be at the right place with the right technology for the right person.
Thank you, Yvon. You mentioned our Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, DFATE. DFATE is a partner of CCR in this effort to facilitate access to international players for our Canadian startups and SMEs. We have several people from DFATE in the room. Would you wave? And thank you for joining us. And at 2 o'clock this afternoon, is an event that, if you look at your program, that you don't want to miss with our colleagues from the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. You mentioned, Yvon, that we are working in partnerships with our colleagues from DFATE. Yesterday morning, we had a meeting of the Canadian Commercialization Consortium, which is a grassroots community to help our companies access this global marketplace. And one of the topics of discussion were 2 pilot projects that we have launched. Jeff, could you take a couple of minutes and for the audience who was not at the C-Cube meeting, describe what are these 2 pilot projects?
Who was at that meeting? Just put up your hand. So most people weren't. Okay. So there's 2 projects. One's called the Global Marketplace. There's all these intermediary organizations, and maybe 50 of them in Canada, and probably the same amount in other countries. how do we connect them and their client companies? So the global marketplace, the goal is to create a global deal flow highway. And the way we did it was, you can't start with everyone at once. So we picked 6 countries, Finland, Singapore, Spain, US, Canada, and England, the UK. And there's an intermediary organization in each of those countries that will be a hub for their own domestic community, their ecosystem there. And there were 2 requirements. You had to have a really entrepreneurial dynamite leader, and you had to have client companies. So these organizations met right after the ICF, and because it was hosted by CCR, which is one of them, and Mario is one of the dynamic leaders, we got 6 Canadian intermediaries. Susan was there, Pamela was there, Yvonne was there, and 3 others, one from Manitoba, one from out east. And they came with one client company that they had done the due diligence within their own portfolio as having a real opportunity to either be global, because they already were, or increasingly go global or go global. And the most exciting thing happened when they presented the company. Pamela started talking about her company. The guy from Singapore sort of lit up, and the guy from Finland said, well, I can connect your CEO with this person. And Rohit from Larta Institute said, I'll connect you here. And the spark started to fly. So what happens is there'll be, between meetings, there'll be deal going on, a web-based hub called The Hub, which Mario will give you the URL, and you can go on it. And then the next meeting might be in the US, and then there'll be 6 US intermediaries. And then when it's in Finland, there'll be 6 Finnish intermediaries. And that way we scale it until there's a deal flow, and the metric of success will be actual commercial transactions between client companies, Susan's client companies, Yvonne's client companies, with client companies in Finland or Singapore or whatever. And we're giving it 12 to 18 months as a pilot, and the 3 goals are commercial deals, partnerships among intermediary organizations, and documenting the model so we can scale it after the pilot phase is finished and everyone can participate. The other project, very briefly, is with DFATE. DFATE has this network that Yvonne referred to of trade commissioners around the world. They're networked themselves, and they know what's going on in their markets. What they want to do is help Canadian companies go global. They do it already, but they want to leverage the ICA and the C-cubed organizations to do that. And so companies, through the intermediaries, are coming forth saying, we have this, and the DFATE people are saying, here's what people are looking for, and there's matching happening. So that's going on as well.
Okay. Just to add a little bit on what you're just talking about now, I think with the global marketplace also, it's a good area for all of us to rethinking about the business model. Because to go globally, we have to rethinking about the business model. We have to innovate in business model. As we already well innovate in the technology perspective, now we really have to innovate in business model. To have our place in the market, as I said before, if you have a good technology, however, you don't have a real business model to fit with these global enterprise where they have their own strategic approach for the market and the dynamic in the market, it's very, very important to innovate your business model. And I think with the DFATE group, if I can say, that will be very important also to shift it a little bit more, not only on technology, but when you have a Canadian company ready to go to the market in your country, it's to asking them, what is your business model? How you think that your business model will fit with the culture, will fit with the company here, will fit with the decision maker. Because if you are not thinking about this, I think you may have the great technology, but you will not be there. And to do commercialization, because that is the goal, what we want, why we are developing this platform, it's really to see how to commercialize. Because about technology, innovation, and all of this, we are well structure. We have a lot of information. We are a lot of very good people there. However, about the business model, innovation and business model, that is the real challenge we are in. And I think the tool we have developed now is a good tool to do that. And this type of initiative you described now, Jeffrey, it's really for us very enthusiastic. And that is why C3 is really enthusiastic to be in that organization and at the startup point. And I'm sure that that will evaluate, because when we talk about innovation, it's never something fixed right at the beginning, because what innovation is, if you think that you have the right thing right at the beginning, it's not a question of this. You need courage. Thank you. And to be sure that we will go in the right way. That's I think is important.
Thank you, Jeff and Yvonne, for these comments. Initiatives like the ones Jeff have described don't happen by themselves. It takes a team. It takes a group of committed organizations. There are, when we had a show of hands, there are maybe 20 intermediary organizations in the room. There are 5 more on the stage. In Canada, there are hundreds of intermediary organizations. A lot of organizations, I must say, cooperate, but I think, if I may say, in Canada, we're not very good at collaborating. And when it comes to connecting to the rest of the world, we have to collaborate in addition to cooperating. So do you have a view on this, Susan?
Well, I think the word that we hear underneath all of the dialogue here is speed and agility. When we look at Canadian companies historically, one of the sad facts, I would say, is we sell the companies way too early, or we sell our IP without putting a business around it. And basically, it's like eating your seed corn, to use a Saskatchewan agricultural example. It's simply not the way to get ahead in the world. It's extremely complicated. It's extremely competitive. But being competitive doesn't mean you can't collaborate. So years ago, old word, co-opetition was the name of a book, I believe, where it basically said that as long as we have our eye on the goal, we can learn how to cooperate, even though in other situations we might be competitors. We haven't found any competition in the ICF, but when we bring our client companies to an MNE, for example, they may be very nervous about, am I going to get eaten alive? I think that phrase is actually used by some of our clients. We need to prepare them to deal with the culture, to deal with understanding the strategy of that potential partner, and to leverage it to their own advantage. We need to make sure our companies grow fast enough that we don't sell early.
Okay. Pamela, do you have any contrasting view on what Susan just said?
Well, perhaps I'd just build on Susan's comments, because we've talked a lot about connections here. And what I think is really important is that we don't start to distract our entrepreneurs, so that we keep saying to the companies, stay focused. And so as we make contacts for them, I see our role is to try and filter and triage and create strategic connections that then the companies then can make a warm contact on, as opposed to just opening up all these connections. It's really got to be, has to be validated. And so I see that as being the real value add. There's many layers to the connections, and it really does take a community to grow a company. And this is really the Canadian community and trying to reach out to the global community. And so I think it's really important to understand that the community and how it participates in making these connections connect.
Thanks, Pamela. We've reached this point where I'd like to open it to the audience and ask if any of you have questions or comments to build on what our riveting panelists have described.
Riveting.
Don't be shy.
We're riveters.
Are you used to tough questions?
Yes.
Oops. He's leaving. I thought he was coming to the mic. Well, I have one question for you. Here in Toronto, Roger Martin each year publishes a report on prosperity and competitiveness in Ontario, trying to identify where the gaps are. And every year he repeats the same message, and for some reason it doesn't seem to be heard very loudly. But it's an element that I find extremely important. He did a survey of the global leaders here in Ontario. And a global leader is a company that is one of the top 5 in the world. We have 89 at the last count in Ontario. And he studied how they became global leaders. His conclusions are quite interesting. They became global leaders not so much because of the disruptive technologies they have brought up, even though they are based on technologies originally. But what made them global leaders is the business model that they have used. And yet, just going around the intermediary organizations, I'm familiar, not only in Ontario, but in other provinces, the focus seems to be on tech companies. It's all about science and technology, and there seems to be little attention paid to helping build robust companies by helping them do commerce, teaching them to do commerce. And I think this is a major gap in our intermediary innovation system in Canada. And I'd like to have your view on this. Do you agree or disagree? You can disagree with me, but that's something I'm quite passionate about, because I find it at times frustrating, personally, to see that this aspect is ignored.
Well, I guess it explains why we're not good at commercialization. So if we go back to the startup genome and the 5 areas that have to be sort of handled in parallel as you grow your company, if you look on the website for the Oklahoma Technology Commercialization Center, they take those 5 elements of a business and analyze the proportional risk as you take a company from idea all the way to growth. And of course, in the beginning, the risk is the technology, the product itself, and then we have a risk with the customer. Mm-hmm. But in the launch, growth, and expansion phase, the risk is business model and management team. It's all about execution. And if you can't execute, you can't grow fast enough. So I think we need to get people in the mindset of their businesses being an evolutionary kind of organization where, yes, you have to worry about all things, but you have to change the priority of what you worry about as you grow the company if you're going to grow quickly enough.
Pam?
I would agree with that. And to add to that, in Alberta, we have the highest rate of startup companies in Canada. So for every 1,000 people, we have 39 startup companies. 96% of our companies are small business, but 69% of those businesses are micro businesses. And the challenge, that's 4 people or less. And we have a challenge in that we start companies, so there's a very much an entrepreneurial spirit, but we don't grow the companies. And we need to remember that it's people that make companies successful. It's not technologies or anything else, it's people. And so we are now focusing on a program on entrepreneur skills development because we've got lots of opportunity, but we need to give entrepreneurs the skills to really grow those companies, because if they continue to stay at the size of 4 people, 10 people, they're never going to get global. And we're never going to really grow the economy. And so I think this is the next pressing thing for us, is to really pay attention to growing talent. And it's a hard thing to do because it's not fast. It's all about taking time and putting the skills together.
Thanks for mentioning this. Yesterday at the discussion with some of our trade commissioners of the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. I was discussing with one commissioner in particular and saying, well, we have all these companies that we could introduce to you, but we don't want to flood you, particularly with pre-revenue company. And that person said, well, we need to pre-qualify. You need intermediary organizations. You need to pre-qualify your companies, and particularly in terms of management. And I mentioned that in CCR, 1/3 of our companies are born global, but it didn't happen by chance. It happened because we developed an initiative called the Embedded Executives, where very early on we put embedded executives in companies. And what we have observed, we have a sample large enough, is that this embedded executive is, even though it's not statistically significant, but there's a clear trend that the companies that have had an embedded executive will raise more follow-on money, will accelerate growth of revenues, and particularly global revenue. So this is something that we see in real time. Kevin.
Brought up the point about foreign affairs, international trade. My name's Kevin Fitzgibbons. I'm the director for the, I guess, the business that we do internationally in innovation, science, and technology. You know, I was listening to this, and I think, you know, riveting. Part of the thing is you got to have somebody that's going to disagree with you. And although I'm not very good at doing that necessarily, I will make one point. I mean, we do talk about going global and how it's so crucial, but it also can be a real mistake if you don't do it right and if you don't have the proper companies that are ready to do so and really are clear. So, you know, it's the greatest opportunity, but it can also kill a company very quickly and short sell, if you like, or make sure that, so what we're interested in, I think, in Canada is the overall, you know, I guess, long-standing economic benefits that are going to come back to Canada by doing so. So one of the reasons that we would like to work with not just the CCR, but through the ICA and the C-Cubed, all these various acronyms that we've got, is that we want you to do the work for the trade commissioners. I don't think anyone that's sitting in here is necessarily going to say that their job is to evaluate the technology. Their job is to follow through on companies that have a real idea of what it is that they want to achieve. And I think we are looking around the table in the workshop that we held yesterday. I'm sure there's probably several thousand companies that you have a hands on. I'd rather have you guys do the work for our people in the field and say, this is really where the opportunities we feel have the best to move ahead. And that saves us a lot of problem and also, in fact, gets us more, I guess, success afterwards. But what's going to be needed here, and we picked up on it yesterday as well. I think it was too short a time to really get into specifics, but we're going to need to see traction. We're going to need to see examples of companies coming forward. So it's a bit of a challenge, I think, to the community at large to say, okay, so what is it? What are the kinds of companies that we're working with that really do have an opportunity, and have we done our homework in terms of saying this is where they need to go? Then I think that's where we around the world, because you need feet on the ground. So we've got lots of them, and they're not supposed to be technologists. They're supposed to be people who get you into the marketplace.
Thanks for these comments, Kevin. At the International Commercialization Forum, there was one breakout session on what is the role of intermediary organizations, like several of you in the room. And the consensus was it's to add value. Add value that would not exist if you would not exist. And I think that one of the added value that we can provide as intermediary organization is to help qualify, not only help grow the companies, but help also
May I have your attention? A special announcement by the Honorable Brad Dugan will take place in 10 minutes in the Tech Zone. Make your way to the Clean Tech Zone for a special announcement by the Honorable Brad Coogan.
Thank you. Another few minutes, and we'll let you go to the announcement theater. It's to advise one way is to work to qualify and put forward these qualified companies. Gentlemen.
My name is Adi Babs. I'm a lead researcher at St. Lawrence College in Kingston. I'm also a professor at the college. And my role as an applied research program manager gives me the opportunity to work with various technology development companies. And I'm also the managing partner at Power Africa. Now, one of the things I see is when a Canadian company, thinks going global, they are thinking US or Europe. They're not really looking at other emerging markets because of fears. And my work at Power Africa, where we help to develop infrastructure in those regions, I realized that Canadian companies have no information whatsoever about the African market. And some of the emerging markets these days are right there in Africa. We have Chinese company going right there, Indian company going into Africa and becoming multinational, just focusing on African markets. How can we diffuse the fears of companies in Canada, giving them information about those markets, so that they can also play a role and develop products that meet needs in those markets?
Thank you for the comment. At the ICF this year, for the first time, we had some representative from Africa. So it's a start in the ICF, and we are going to working with our trade commissioner in Africa. We already have identified more organizations to come to the forum next year. Would any of the panelists like to comment on this gentleman's
Canada's been very fat and happy. That's what Kirk Mandy says. I mean, we have resources in the ground and we dig them up and sell them. And we have this huge market down south of the border. So there's a culture of laziness and risk aversion in Canada that we're trying to fight. I mean, I'll give you data. There's 25,000 companies, more than 25,000 companies that do R&D in Canada. Statistics Canada data. We analyzed it, and there only 200 plus of those companies have good sales and have grown and are large and have a lot of employees and they're growing. The other ones, they're sort of walking wounded. They're sort of in business for 10 years, maybe a lifestyle company. They don't want to grow. They're just making the payroll. Because they're focused on technology, they don't have a good business model. They're not thinking about Africa. They're not talking to people like yourself, how to get there. We're trying to combat that, but it's a struggle. So your point about intermediaries being qualifiers of companies, each one has a big portfolio. It's really important that you, know the challenge, which everyone does, that we're fighting a cultural thing. We have governments funding people saying, ideas to market, work with university researchers. University researchers don't want to be business people. It's business people who want to be business people. How do you get them to work together? We're focusing on just startups. There's very few intermediaries in this country who work with a company that already has 10 million in revenue and are in 3 countries, but wants to grow to $1 billion. There's a few, but not many. So there's a lot of challenges we have in Canada, and that's one of them. You've raised one. And let's not put on rose-colored glasses and say it's going to be easy, but it's the only way for us to really succeed. We have to challenge ourselves.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm afraid we have run out of time, and there are other panels that will start soon. So I want to thank our panelists for this interesting discussion. Last word, last week, one of my colleagues, Claudia Kriviak, who is in the room here, sent me an article from Forbes magazine. It's the blog from Scott Hartley. And I think he summarized it best for us by saying, we are in an age of largely positive, conspicuous creation. The rise of entrepreneurial class supersedes nationality. Innovation is a demographic, not a geographic phenomenon. Domestic is just becoming an anachronism. It's a modern impossibility. Thank you very much for your attention.